You're tuned in to our 4th of July 2025 flashback weekend, a look back at some of the biggest stories we've been covering for you so far in 2025. What you're about to hear is a previous broadcast.
This is continuing coverage of United States versus Sean Diddy Combs from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today.
This last week, in case you missed it, saw a federal judge in Manhattan threatening to kick Sean Diddy Combs out of his own trial because he won't stop nodding at the jury like he's conducting an orchestra. That actually happened 3 days ago. And it's just one surreal moment in what might be the most explosive celebrity trial of our time. Like, we're 4 weeks into Sean Combs' federal trial on sex trafficking and racketeering charges, and the testimony has been absolutely devastating. Judge Aron Subramanian is presiding over a case where prosecutors are arguing that Combs ran a criminal enterprise disguised as a music empire, while his defense team claims this is all about consensual adult relationships gone wrong. The star witness was Cassie Ventura, who took the stand for 4 consecutive days in mid-May. She was 8.5 months pregnant when she testified, and she revealed for the first time that her 2023 civil settlement with Combs was worth $20 million. But the money wasn't the shocking part. Cassie described in excruciating detail what she called freak-offs, allegedly forced sexual encounters with male escorts that Combs would orchestrate and film. She testified these could last for days, that she needed medical treatment afterward for injuries and infections, and that she had to take MDMA just to get through them. Cassie told the jury about specific incidents of violence. The 2016 hotel assault that we all saw on video was just one example. She described being punched in restaurants, having objects thrown at her, and being dragged by her hair. She testified that in 2018, after they'd broken up, Combs allegedly raped her in her Malibu apartment following a dinner. The prosecution showed the jury photographs of her injuries over the years: black eyes, cuts, bruises, a gash on her forehead. But here's what made her testimony particularly powerful. The defense had 400 exhibits ready for cross-examination, text messages where Cassie expressed love for Combs, social media posts showing them together looking happy, evidence of her continued contact with him, even after violent incidents. Defense attorney Anna Estevao spent 2.5 days trying to show that this was a complicated relationship where both people were violent, not a criminal enterprise. She asked Cassie about drug use, about times she'd initiated contact with Combs, about whether she understood the difference between Sean the person and Sean the businessman. The prosecution strategy became clear with their second major witness, Dawn Richard from Danity Kane. Dawn testified about witnessing Combs attack Cassie in his kitchen in 2009. She described him coming downstairs screaming about his eggs, taking a frying pan, and swinging it at Cassie, who dropped to the ground trying to protect her head. Dawn said Combs then dragged Cassie upstairs by her hair while she heard glass breaking and yelling. The next day, Combs allegedly told Dawn and another witness that what they'd seen was just passion between lovers, and that it would be in their best interest not to say anything because where he comes from, people go missing if they talk. Kid Cootie's testimony added another layer. He testified that after he briefly dated Cassie, his Porsche was destroyed with a Molotov cocktail. The defense objected heavily to this testimony, arguing there was no direct evidence linking Combs to the car bombing, but the judge allowed it as part of the pattern evidence the prosecution is building. The employee testimony has been particularly damaging. A former assistant testifying under the pseudonym Mia spent 3 days on the witness stand describing her own alleged sexual assault by Combs and witnessing his abuse of Cassie. She testified that Combs raped her in 2013, forced her to perform oral sex, and that she felt trapped because speaking out would mean losing her job and being silenced, punished, exiled. She described watching Combs slam a bathroom door on her arm multiple times after he took her phone and threatened to use anything incriminating he found on it against her. During Mia's cross-examination, the defense tried to paint her as a disgruntled employee seeking money. They pointed out that she'd been approached by lawyers in 2023 about potentially filing a lawsuit against Combs, but Mia testified that she actually turned down the opportunity to sue because she was too afraid of retaliation. The hotel security testimony has been explosive. Israel Flores, who was working security at the Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles in March 2016, testified about responding to the incident we saw on that surveillance video. He said Combs approached him afterward with what he interpreted as a bribe attempt, telling him, "You take care of this, and I'll take care of you," while holding a wad of cash. Flores said he declined the money and reported the incident to his supervisors. But the most damning security testimony came from Eddie Garcia, who was given immunity by the government. Garcia admitted that he later sold that 2016 surveillance video to a media outlet for $100,000. But before he sold it, he testified that representatives for Combs approached him, trying to buy his silence. He described being handed a brown paper bag full of cash as a payment to keep quiet about what he'd witnessed. The financial evidence tells its own story. Derek Ferguson, the former chief financial officer for Bad Boy Records, testified about suspicious transactions, including a $20,000 payment from Cassie's father to Combs that was mysteriously returned the next day. Ferguson also testified about excessive hotel bills for cleanup and damages, and payments to various individuals that prosecutors suggest were escorts or people being paid to stay quiet. Federal agent Yasin Binda from Homeland Security Investigations testified about what they found when they arrested Combs at the Park Hyatt Hotel in September. In his room, they discovered multiple bottles of baby oil, illegal drugs hidden under the alias Frank Black, and $9,000 in cash. Binda walked the jury through photographs of the items, explaining how they matched what witnesses had described being used during the alleged freak-offs. The evidence from the raids on Combs' homes is staggering. Over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant, AR-15 rifles with defaced serial numbers, large quantities of drugs including ketamine, MDMA, cocaine, and mushrooms. Prosecutors have suggested this was all part of the infrastructure needed to carry out the alleged criminal enterprise. Right now, the prosecution's key witness is someone testifying under the pseudonym Jane, who was allegedly in a relationship with Combs from 2020 to 2023. She's describing what she calls hotel nights, which sound remarkably similar to what Cassie described as freak-offs. Jane testified that these encounters happened as recently as August 2024, just weeks before Combs was arrested. She broke down on the witness stand describing an incident that happened on her birthday, when what was supposed to be a makeup trip turned into another forced encounter. She testified that Combs is still paying the rent on her Los Angeles home, highlighting the financial control that prosecutors say was central to the alleged criminal enterprise. Jane's testimony has included audio recordings of Combs threatening her. In one voice note played for the jury, Combs can be heard saying, "I'm about to really disappear on you. I'm not going to be playing these games with you. I can't do this shit with you each time you get upset," Jane responded via text. "You've been making things completely transactional. You've been threatening me any chance you get. This shit is sick." The defense strategy throughout has been to attack the credibility of each witness. They've suggested that people are motivated by money since many have filed civil lawsuits against Combs. They've pointed to drug use by witnesses, suggesting their memories are unreliable. They've tried to show that these were complicated adult relationships where both parties made choices, not criminal enterprises involving coercion and trafficking. But the prosecution keeps bringing witness after witness with similar stories. Mila Morales, a makeup artist, testified about covering bruises on Cassie's body for public appearances. Cassie's mother testified about her daughter's injuries and the fear she lived with. Carrie Morgan, Cassie's former best friend, testified about witnessing the aftermath of violent incidents. The prosecution has also brought in expert witnesses. Dr. Dawn Hughes, a forensic psychologist, testified about the psychological impacts of intimate partner violence and coercive control. George Kaplan, another former executive assistant to Combs, testified about the business operations and how the alleged criminal activity was integrated into legitimate business functions. Deontay Nash, a celebrity stylist who worked with both Combs and Cassie, testified about witnessing violence. He described an incident where he had to physically intervene, jumping on Combs' back to stop him from beating Cassie. Nash also testified that Combs threatened to send sex tapes of Cassie to her parents' workplaces to get them fired, which goes directly to the prosecution's argument about using the recordings for coercion and control. The courtroom drama has been intense beyond just the testimony. There have been multiple disruptions from the gallery, including a woman who had to be escorted out for screaming, "Diddy, these motherfuckers," laughing at you during proceedings. The judge has had to deal with media outlets revealing the true identity of witnesses testifying under pseudonyms, creating security concerns. Judge Subramanian has shown increasing frustration with Combs' behavior in court. Beyond the nodding at jurors, there have been incidents where Combs has been observed making gestures or attempting to communicate with family members in the gallery in ways that the judge has deemed inappropriate. The threat to remove him from his own trial is extraordinary and shows just how seriously the judge is taking courtroom decorum. The prosecution is building toward a RICO conviction, which requires proving that Combs led a criminal enterprise. They're arguing that he used his legitimate businesses, including Bad Boy Records and other Combs companies, to facilitate crimes including sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. The RICO framework allows them to bring in evidence spanning decades because they're arguing it's all part of one continuing criminal conspiracy. As we head into the trial's second month, the prosecution still has more witnesses to call. We're expecting to hear from additional hotel employees who can testify about preparing rooms for alleged freak-offs, more federal agents who can discuss digital evidence found on seized devices, and potentially additional victims who haven't yet been identified publicly. The defense hasn't indicated whether Combs will testify on his own behalf, given his apparent difficulty controlling his behavior even while sitting silently at the defense table. Putting him on the witness stand would be incredibly risky. Cross-examination by federal prosecutors would be brutal, and any inconsistencies in his testimony could be devastating. If convicted on all charges, Combs faces a minimum of 15 years in prison with the possibility of life behind bars. The sex trafficking charges alone carry a 15-year minimum sentence, and the racketeering charge can result in life imprisonment. At 55 years old, even the minimum sentence would likely mean he dies in prison. But this trial is about more than one man's fate. The testimony we're hearing is forcing a reckoning with power dynamics in the entertainment industry that have been ignored for decades. Multiple witnesses have testified about their fear of speaking out because of Combs' influence over careers and livelihoods. The prosecution is arguing that this fear was deliberately cultivated as part of the criminal enterprise. The case continues, with Jane's testimony expected to conclude early next week, followed by additional prosecution witnesses. Legal experts predict we won't see closing arguments until sometime in July, making this one of the longest high-profile criminal trials in recent memory. But given the volume of evidence and the number of witnesses, the prosecution appears to be building an overwhelming case that this wasn't just a powerful man with a complicated personal life, but rather a carefully constructed criminal operation that used music industry infrastructure to facilitate serious crimes. Whatever the verdict, this trial has already changed conversations about accountability, consent, and power in ways that will extend far beyond the hip-hop community. The jury will ultimately decide not just Sean Combs' fate, but whether our justice system can hold the powerful accountable regardless of their wealth, influence, or cultural impact.
In a world where the darkest secrets lie just beneath the surface.
They said it was an accident, but the evidence says otherwise.
Where hidden killers roam, unnoticed, in the shadows.
I think you would definitely be looking at a blend of toxic, very bad narcissistic personality traits, and they will be vengeful and possibly resort to violence.
Join Tony Brueski as he uncovers the truth behind the most chilling cases.
They said it was an accident, but the evidence clearly says otherwise.
Each episode, we dig deep into the minds of those who commit the unthinkable.
To your point on narcissism, he thinks in his own mind how witty he is.
Yeah.
But he lost that jury. I was done with him in 2 minutes.
From unsolved mysteries to infamous crimes.
Geez, you've just talked about how you've taught yourself how to do everything under the sun. I bet you did a YouTube video, how to best kill somebody with a knife.
Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski takes you where few dare to go.
How does someone with such a dark secret go unnoticed for so long?
With multiple new episodes every single day.
We're not just telling stories, we're seeking justice.
Listen now on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski.